Michael Jordan watches security harass a teen selling water, then gives him a job offer. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Michael Jordan's journey to becoming a basketball legend started long before he ever stepped onto an NBA court. It began in Wilmington, North Carolina, where he was born in 1963 to James and Dolores Jordan. Michael was the fourth of 5 children in a family where competition was a constant force. His father was a hard-working, strict man, while his mother offered a more nurturing influence, encouraging Michael to always do his best, no matter the odds. This environment would shape Michael into the driven, competitive force he would become. Growing up, Michael wasn't immediately known for his basketball prowess. In fact, he faced one of the most humiliating setbacks of his early life during his sophomore year at Laney High School. He tried out for the varsity basketball team but was cut, something that could have crushed his spirit. Instead, it lit a fire inside him. Determined to prove the coaches wrong, Michael threw himself into improving his game. He spent hours on the court, practicing every day. His work ethic became legendary even before he reached the pros. Michael's growth as a player was evident the following year when he made the varsity team and quickly became its star. His ability to score, rebound, and play defense caught the attention of scouts across the nation. His competitive nature, fueled by the rejection he had faced, pushed him to perfect his skills, earning him a scholarship to the University of North Carolina. At UNC, under legendary coach Dean Smith, Jordan's talent began to truly shine. Despite being surrounded by other talented players, it wasn't long before Michael became the focal point of the team. His ability to dominate on the court was undeniable, but it was his mental toughness and unwavering drive that set him apart. He was no longer just the kid who had been cut from his high school team, he was becoming one of the best players in the country. The pinnacle of Michael's college career came in the 1982 NCAA championship game. With less than 20 seconds remaining and the score tied, Jordan hit a clutch shot to win the game for UNC. It was the first time the world saw Michael Jordan take control in a pressure situation, and it foreshadowed what was to come in his career. Even with a national title under his belt, Jordan wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He knew he was ready for the NBA, and in 1984, he declared for the NBA draft. The Chicago Bulls, a franchise that had been struggling for years, selected him with the 3rd overall pick. The decision would change the course of the franchise's history, but the pressure on Michael was immense. The expectations were sky high, and many wondered whether a rookie could turn around a team that had been stuck in mediocrity for so long. In his first season with the Bulls, Jordan proved his critics wrong. He averaged over 28 points per game and won the NBA Rookie of the Year award. His scoring ability was extraordinary, but it was his hunger to win and his desire to elevate those around him that truly set him apart. Jordan didn't just want to be the best, he wanted to make everyone around him better. His ability to inspire his teammates became one of his greatest strengths. However, despite Jordan's individual brilliance, the Bulls were still a team in transition. They made the playoffs, but they were far from contenders. It wasn't enough to just have Michael Jordan on the team, the Bulls needed more pieces to truly challenge for an NBA title. For Jordan, this was just another obstacle to overcome, and he wasn't about to back down. He poured everything he had into improving his game, constantly refining his skills. The early years in Chicago were filled with both highs and lows. The team struggled in the postseason, but Jordan's determination never wavered. He faced immense pressure from the media, fans, and even his own teammates to perform at the highest level. But for Jordan, failure wasn't an option. He had experienced the sting of rejection too many times in his life to let it define him. He used every setback as fuel to push himself harder. Through his hard work, Jordan began to change the culture in Chicago. His relentless work ethic became the blueprint for his teammates. His commitment to winning rubbed off on everyone around him. Slowly but surely, the Bulls began to improve. But it wasn't just about talent. Jordan knew the team needed a great coach to unlock their potential. In 1989, the Bulls hired Phil Jackson, a coach who would help them reach the pinnacle of success. Jackson's leadership and philosophy were the perfect match for Jordan's hunger for greatness. With Jackson at the helm, the Bulls began to blossom into a championship-caliber team. But even then, there was still one major obstacle: the Detroit Pistons. The Bad Boys, as they were called, were a physical, tough team that constantly bullied the Bulls in the postseason. Jordan's greatest challenge to date was coming face-to-face with the Pistons in the 1990 Eastern Conference Finals. In that series, Jordan's individual brilliance was on full display, but it wasn't enough. The Pistons' physical style of play frustrated him, and they defeated the Bulls yet again. For many, it seemed like Jordan would never be able to get past the Pistons, and as a result, he would never win an NBA title. But Michael Jordan was not a player to give up easily. He spent that offseason working tirelessly to improve his body and his game. He knew that if the Bulls were going to defeat the Pistons, they would need to become more physical and mentally tougher. Jordan's drive to win had taken on new meaning. It was no longer just about proving he was the best player in the league, it was about conquering every obstacle that stood in his way. In the 1991 season, the Bulls and Pistons met again in the Eastern Conference Finals. This time, Jordan and the Bulls were ready. They swept the Pistons in 4 games, a stunning turnaround that propelled the Bulls to the NBA Finals. It was a defining moment in Jordan's career, a sign that he had finally overcome the mental and physical obstacles that had held him back. The 1991 Finals marked the beginning of an era of dominance for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Jordan's leadership, work ethic, and competitive fire helped propel the Bulls to their first NBA title. It was the culmination of years of hard work, failure, and sacrifice. The team's success was a testament to Jordan's refusal to accept anything less than greatness. By now, Michael Jordan had not only established himself as the best player in the NBA, but he had also laid the groundwork for a legacy that would be remembered for generations to come. His relentless pursuit of excellence and his ability to overcome obstacles set him apart from his peers. The world had witnessed the making of a legend, but what was to come in the following years would redefine basketball and sports culture forever. Jordan's story was no longer just about basketball, it was about something bigger. It was about the power of perseverance, the strength of the human spirit, and the determination to achieve greatness, no matter the odds. And this was just the beginning of Michael Jordan's legendary journey. Michael Jordan's ascent to NBA stardom was not just a story of talent, but of relentless dedication, and a quest to carve his name into basketball history. After his successful college career at the University of North Carolina, Jordan's name was already starting to gain national recognition. But making the leap from college to the NBA was a new challenge, and no one was quite sure how the world's best college player would fare against seasoned professionals. In 1984, Jordan entered the NBA draft and was selected 3rd overall by the Chicago Bulls. He was joining a team that had been largely unsuccessful for years, one that had struggled to find its identity and rise above mediocrity. While many believed Jordan's individual talent was undeniable, there were doubts about whether he could elevate the Bulls into championship contenders. The franchise had been in the basement of the NBA for too long. Jordan was the spark, but would it be enough to light the fire of success? In his rookie season, Jordan wasted no time making an impact. His skills on the court were evident right from the start. He averaged 28.2 points per game, won Rookie of the Year honors, and immediately became the focal point of the Bulls' offense. Chicago fans, starved for a superstar, quickly embraced him. Jordan's highlight reel was filled with spectacular dunks, game-winning shots, and jaw-dropping performances. He was everything the Bulls had hoped for, and more. But as the Bulls were discovering, individual greatness could only take them so far. The team, while talented, was still flawed. Jordan's extraordinary ability to score kept the Bulls competitive, but the lack of a solid supporting cast, and an overall sense of team chemistry, meant they still had a long way to go before becoming a true championship contender. Despite this, Jordan never stopped pushing. His competitive drive was already evident in every practice and every game. He hated losing and believed every defeat, every challenge, was an opportunity to improve. His basketball IQ was off the charts, but it was his mental approach that made him unique. Jordan didn't just play the game, he studied it. He studied his opponents, watched every possible game film, and looked for weaknesses in their strategies. His obsession with becoming the best was evident in his tireless work ethic. By the end of his second season, Jordan had already begun to elevate his teammates. The Bulls were no longer the same team they had been. But it wasn't until Coach Doug Collins took over in 1986 that the Bulls started to take a more serious shape. Collins recognized Jordan's greatness and built the team around him. He gave Jordan the green light to take control of the offense and essentially run the show. Under Collins' leadership, the Bulls became a much better team, but they still weren't contenders. Jordan was still the team's primary scorer, but the lack of depth and defensive consistency were glaring weaknesses. The team could not compete with the powerhouses of the league like the Boston Celtics or the Los Angeles Lakers. Jordan's scoring ability had begun to garner attention around the league, but many still questioned whether he could ever lead a team to an NBA title. In the meantime, the NBA landscape was beginning to change. The Detroit Pistons, with their bad boy style of play, were emerging as a dominant force in the Eastern Conference. They were a physical, rough team led by the likes of Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman. The Pistons' strategy was simple: impose their will on their opponents, break them down mentally and physically, and then finish them off. They were the team that everyone feared, and for Jordan and the Bulls, they represented the final hurdle they needed to overcome to become true contenders. In 1988, the Bulls were facing the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. Jordan's incredible individual efforts had gotten Chicago this far, but the Pistons were a different animal. They were bigger, tougher, and more experienced. Their physical style of play was a nightmare for Jordan, who had not yet developed the strength to match the brutality of Detroit's defense. In this series, Jordan's extraordinary individual play wasn't enough. The Pistons defeated the Bulls in 7 games, sending them home for another year of disappointment. For Jordan, this loss stung deeply. It wasn't just a playoff defeat, it was a reminder that no matter how great an individual player was, basketball was still a team game. Jordan knew that if the Bulls were going to take the next step, they needed to improve in every facet of the game, not just offensively, but defensively and mentally. During the offseason, Jordan worked relentlessly to add muscle to his frame, but also to develop his basketball IQ even further. He knew that in order to beat the Pistons, he had to adapt his game. In 1989, Jordan returned to the league more determined than ever. He had put in the work, both in the gym and on the court, to become an even more complete player. His offensive game had already been nearly flawless, but now, he was working on his defense, his passing, and his leadership on the court. In the 1990 Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls once again found themselves facing the Pistons. But this time, Jordan was different. He had spent the last year strengthening his body, and his team had improved as well. Scottie Pippen was coming into his own, and the Bulls' defense was much stronger. Most importantly, Jordan had developed a new mindset. He no longer viewed the Pistons as an obstacle, he viewed them as a challenge that he was determined to overcome. The 1990 series against Detroit was brutal. The Pistons continued to play their hard-nosed style, but this time, the Bulls were ready. Jordan was a different player, a more complete force. The Bulls outplayed the Pistons in every facet of the game. With each game, the Bulls grew more confident. They were no longer intimidated by the Pistons' physicality. Jordan's scoring ability, combined with Pippen's emerging defense and leadership, allowed the Bulls to dominate the series. The Bulls swept the Pistons in 4 games, a stunning result that shocked the basketball world. This victory marked a major turning point in the Bulls' history. They had finally conquered the toughest obstacle in the Eastern Conference, and Jordan's leadership and development had propelled them to the top. But as satisfying as the victory over the Pistons was, the real challenge was still ahead: the NBA Finals. In the 1991 NBA Finals, the Chicago Bulls faced the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson. The Lakers were the reigning champions, and they were a seasoned, talented team. But Jordan and the Bulls were ready for the challenge. In the finals, Jordan delivered a series of unforgettable performances, capped by his now iconic flu game, where he scored 38 points despite being visibly sick. The Bulls defeated the Lakers in 5 games, claiming their first-ever NBA championship. This victory marked the beginning of the Bulls dynasty, but more importantly, it solidified Michael Jordan as one of the greatest players to ever play the game. His determination to evolve and adapt his game had finally paid off. The obstacles that once seemed insurmountable, physical teams like the Pistons, tough playoff battles, and the challenges of team building, had all been overcome. Michael Jordan was no longer just a star, he was the face of a championship-winning dynasty. In the years that followed, Jordan and the Bulls would continue to dominate the NBA, winning 6 championships in the 1990s. But it all started with that game-changing year, 1991. That was the year Michael Jordan truly became the player who would redefine basketball and cement his legacy as the greatest of all time. Michael Jordan's entry into the NBA in 1984 was a seismic event for the basketball world. After an outstanding college career at the University of North Carolina, he had left an indelible mark on the sport, culminating in his unforgettable game-winning shot in the NCAA championship. Yet, the leap to professional basketball was another challenge altogether. In his rookie season, Jordan was entering a league populated by the best players in the world, many of whom had been competing at the highest level for years. Expectations for the young star were high, but so were the challenges. Drafted by the Chicago Bulls as the 3rd overall pick, Jordan was immediately thrust into the spotlight. He was joining a Bulls team that had not made the playoffs in the previous 4 seasons. The Bulls were a franchise with promise but had been mired in mediocrity. Chicago had some talent, but it lacked the kind of superstar who could carry the team to championship glory. The city had high hopes for Jordan, who was expected to elevate the franchise and become a transcendent player in the league. Right from the start, Jordan made an immediate impact. In his debut game, he scored 16 points and grabbed 6 rebounds, showcasing his skill, athleticism, and poise. The Bulls went on to lose the game, but it was clear that Jordan had arrived. The expectation that he would be the franchise savior was becoming more and more evident. Chicago fans were hungry for a winner, and they believed that Michael Jordan could be their ticket to greatness. Over the course of the season, Jordan lived up to the hype, and then some. His rookie year was filled with highlights, impressive performances, and remarkable feats that left even seasoned NBA veterans in awe. He averaged 28.2 points per game and finished 3rd in voting for the Rookie of the Year award, behind Hakeem Olajuwon and Sam Bowie. Jordan quickly became one of the most exciting players to watch, dominating the court with his unique combination of speed, athleticism, and basketball IQ. It was as if the game came naturally to him. He played with a sense of purpose and intensity that few could match. Jordan's ability to drive to the basket was unmatched, and his hang time on jump shots made him one of the most dangerous scorers in the league. His impressive repertoire included long-range shooting, acrobatic layups, and powerful dunks that had fans on their feet. He was already showing signs of becoming the most dynamic offensive player in the league. But it wasn't just about scoring. Jordan was also a relentless defender, and he quickly established himself as one of the league's top perimeter defenders. His quick hands, basketball instincts, and ability to read the game made him a two-way threat who could affect both ends of the floor. However, despite Jordan's individual brilliance, the Chicago Bulls were still struggling as a team. They finished the 1984-85 season with a mediocre record of 38-44. The Bulls were still a team in transition, and Jordan, despite his many accolades, could not lift the team on his own. It became apparent that for Jordan to achieve the success he was capable of, the team needed to improve in more areas. While his play had been extraordinary, the Bulls still lacked the depth and cohesion necessary for playoff contention. This lack of team success didn't discourage Jordan, but rather motivated him further. He was driven by the desire not just to be great, but to make his team great. Jordan recognized that individual success alone wasn't enough, it was about winning as a team. His fierce competitive nature pushed him to not only develop his own game, but also to encourage and challenge his teammates to elevate their performances. By the start of his second season, Jordan's game had evolved. He had spent the summer refining his skills, adding new moves to his arsenal, and improving his strength and conditioning. The physical demands of the NBA were intense, and Jordan understood that if he wanted to not only survive but thrive, he would have to constantly improve. He worked tirelessly to add muscle to his frame while also sharpening his basketball skills. The arrival of coach Doug Collins in 1986 would prove to be a turning point for the Bulls. Collins recognized Jordan's talent and saw him as the centerpiece of the team. Under Collins' leadership, the Bulls began to shift their focus, building their offense around Jordan. Collins ran plays designed to put the ball in Jordan's hands and allow him to create opportunities, not only for himself but also for his teammates. With Jordan as the focal point, the Bulls began to play a more dynamic, fast-paced style of basketball. Collins encouraged Jordan to be more of a leader on the court, to take charge of the game and set the tone for the team. Jordan responded by stepping up, not only as the team's best player but also as its most vocal leader. The more responsibility he took on, the more he grew. Jordan's confidence soared, and his desire to lead his team to success became even more apparent. Under Collins' guidance, Jordan had room to fully embrace his role as the team's alpha dog. By the end of the 1985-86 season, the Bulls had made significant improvements. They finished with a respectable 30-52 record, which was an improvement over the previous year, and while the team wasn't yet a serious championship contender, Jordan's progression as a player was clear. He finished the season with an astonishing 37.1 points per game, the highest in the league, and earned his first All-Star game appearance. His scoring ability was becoming legendary, and he was quickly gaining a reputation as one of the most dominant players in the league. But despite his outstanding individual accomplishments, the Bulls were still facing challenges when it came to the postseason. The team was not yet capable of matching up with the elite teams in the league. Jordan had proven that he could score and carry the team on his back, but for the Bulls to take the next step, they would need more than just a scoring phenom. They needed a team that could defend, pass, and play as a cohesive unit. Jordan's second season in the league was both a personal triumph and a harsh lesson in the realities of professional basketball. He had proven he was capable of being one of the best players in the game, but he also learned that basketball was a team sport. While his individual play was enough to keep the Bulls competitive, it wasn't enough to secure a championship. Jordan knew that for him to win on the NBA's biggest stage, he would need more than just scoring. He would need a team that could complement his abilities and help him reach the ultimate goal, a championship. The 1985-86 season was a reminder to Jordan that greatness was a journey. He had taken a giant leap in his development as a player, but the road ahead was still long. As the season ended, Jordan remained focused on improving, determined to do whatever it took to make the Chicago Bulls a championship team. Little did he know, the next few years would lay the groundwork for what would become a legendary dynasty. The lessons learned in these early seasons would be critical in his rise to the top of the NBA, and the entire basketball world would soon know Michael Jordan as more than just a rookie sensation. He would become a force of nature. Michael Jordan's early years in the NBA were defined by his individual brilliance, but the journey to his first championship was far from a smooth ride. While Jordan's performances were the highlight for the Chicago Bulls, the team itself was still far from contention. A defining feature of his early years was the rise of a fierce and, at times, vicious rivalry with the Detroit Pistons, one that would push him and the Bulls to new heights. In the late 1980s, the Detroit Pistons were the most dominant team in the Eastern Conference. Known for their physical, no-holds-barred style of play, they were led by Isaiah Thomas, one of the most talented and fiercely competitive point guards in the league, along with rugged players like Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, and Dennis Rodman. The Pistons had earned their nickname, the Bad Boys, for a reason. They played basketball with an edge. No one was going to get past them without a fight. For Michael Jordan and the Bulls, the Pistons represented an obstacle that seemed insurmountable. Chicago had come close to breaking through in the Eastern Conference, but each year, it was the Pistons who stood in their way. The physical style of play that the Pistons employed was particularly frustrating for Jordan, who was known for his athleticism and finesse. The Pistons often used their rough, aggressive tactics to wear Jordan down, both physically and mentally. The Bulls had their own emerging stars, notably Scottie Pippen, who was becoming one of the most versatile and formidable players in the league. But despite Jordan's scoring ability and Pippen's potential, the team had yet to put it all together. Jordan's individual brilliance alone could not overcome the ruthless intensity of the Pistons, and each year, Detroit stood between Chicago and a chance to make it to the NBA Finals. The first major clash between the Bulls and the Pistons occurred in the 1988 Eastern Conference Finals. The Pistons, with their rough-and-tumble approach, were ready to throw everything they had at Jordan. The series was a brutal one, with Detroit using every trick in the book to slow down Jordan. They focused on taking away his ability to drive to the basket, often using physical fouls to frustrate him. Despite Jordan's incredible individual play, the Pistons won the series 4-2, and the Bulls were sent home again, defeated and mentally exhausted. But for Jordan, this defeat wasn't a reason to give up, it was a reason to get better. He spent the offseason working tirelessly, focusing on improving his strength, conditioning, and mental toughness. He knew that if the Bulls were ever going to get past the Pistons, they would have to become just as tough, both physically and mentally. Jordan wasn't just looking to improve his game, he was preparing to wage war on the Pistons. In the following season, the Bulls became a more complete team. Coach Phil Jackson had taken over the reins, and his philosophy, which emphasized teamwork, discipline, and the mental aspects of the game, began to take hold. Jackson encouraged Jordan and Pippen to work together more effectively, fostering the growth of a duo that would eventually become the most dangerous in the league. The Bulls also started to develop more depth, with key players like Horace Grant, John Paxson, and B.J. Armstrong stepping up to provide support. The rivalry between the Bulls and Pistons only intensified as the years went on. The Pistons, despite their toughness, had a weakness: their inability to keep up with a faster, more athletic team. Chicago had slowly begun to make adjustments to their offense and defense. Jordan, as always, was the focal point of the offense, but Pippen was starting to come into his own as a defender, a playmaker, and a secondary scoring option. The team was starting to look more and more like a championship contender, but Detroit still loomed large. In the 1990 Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls once again faced the Pistons. The series was a repeat of the previous year's intensity, with both teams playing at an unforgiving pace. The Pistons continued to use their physicality to frustrate Jordan, but this time, it was different. Jordan was stronger, more confident, and had the mental fortitude to withstand the onslaught. The game plan was changing for the Bulls. They knew they had to match the Pistons' toughness while also maintaining their speed and skill. Chicago's defense, led by the emerging Pippen, had also improved. The Bulls were no longer the team that had been bullied in previous years. They were able to match the Pistons' physicality and fight fire with fire. Jordan, still the primary scorer, was now being supported more than ever. Pippen's defensive brilliance neutralized key Pistons players, and Chicago's offense was humming with a more balanced attack. In a stunning turn of events, the Bulls swept the Pistons 4-0, finally overcoming the team that had been their nemesis for so long. The victory was cathartic for Jordan and the Bulls. They had finally beaten the team that had defined their struggles for years. The series was not just a physical victory, it was a mental one. Jordan had not only overcome the Pistons' physicality, but had also proven that he and the Bulls were no longer intimidated by them. The win was a symbol of Chicago's growth as a championship-caliber team. The victory over the Pistons in 1991 was one of the defining moments in Michael Jordan's career. It represented the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and mental fortitude. But it was also the beginning of something bigger. Jordan had proven that he could overcome adversity, and that was something he would carry with him through the rest of his career. The next challenge was even greater: the NBA Finals. The 1991 NBA Finals saw the Chicago Bulls face off against the Los Angeles Lakers, led by the legendary Magic Johnson. The Lakers had been the dominant team of the 1980s, winning 5 championships in that decade. They were experienced, well-coached, and had a roster filled with Hall of Fame talent. For Jordan and the Bulls, the Lakers represented the pinnacle of NBA success. To win the championship, they would have to beat the best team in the league. In a 5-game series, the Bulls defeated the Lakers 4-1 to win their first NBA championship. Jordan's performance in the finals was nothing short of legendary. He averaged 31.2 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 11.4 assists per game, showcasing his all-around game in ways that would define his legacy. The Bulls had dethroned the Lakers, and in doing so, Jordan had cemented his place among the game's greatest players. The rivalry with the Pistons, while painful at the time, had propelled Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls to new heights. The experience had shaped the team and turned them into a championship contender. The defeat of Detroit was not just about winning a series, it was a statement. It was a declaration that Michael Jordan was ready to take his place as one of the greatest players in NBA history, and that the Chicago Bulls were no longer just a team with a great player. They were a dynasty in the making. In 1991, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls had reached a pivotal point in their development. After years of frustration, close calls, and learning from mistakes, they had finally overcome the toughest opponent they would face in the Eastern Conference, the Detroit Pistons. That victory not only solidified their place as the new powerhouse in the East, but it also set them up for a dramatic shift in their journey, a journey that would lead them to the top of the NBA. For Michael Jordan, the 1991 season would be the breakthrough that made him not only the best player in the world but also the centerpiece of a dynasty that would rule the 1990s. When Jordan stepped onto the court for the 1991 NBA Finals, the weight of his career thus far hung heavy. He had carried the Chicago Bulls through the grueling regular seasons, led them to playoff appearances, and had learned the hard lessons of failure. In 1991, the team was finally ready for the ultimate test, the NBA championship. They were facing the Los Angeles Lakers, a team that had ruled the 1980s with the legendary Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The Lakers were not just a formidable opponent, they were an iconic team with a legacy that was nearly untouchable. For Jordan, however, the championship was no longer just about proving he was the best individual player in the league. It was about something greater. It was about leading his team to the top and fulfilling a promise he had made to himself and to the city of Chicago. The moment had arrived. Jordan was ready to not just compete, but to dominate. In the finals, the Bulls were an entirely different team compared to the previous seasons. The addition of coach Phil Jackson had been a game-changer. Jackson's leadership style was based on trust, unity, and the philosophy of the triangle offense. His coaching allowed Jordan to elevate his game to new levels. It wasn't just about scoring anymore. Jackson emphasized team chemistry, ball movement, and unselfishness, which allowed players like Scottie Pippen to thrive alongside Jordan. The team, as a unit, had developed into a cohesive force. With Pippen's defense and versatility, and the supporting cast including Horace Grant, John Paxson, and B.J. Armstrong, the Bulls were finally positioned to compete for a title. In the 1991 Finals, the Bulls faced the Lakers with a quiet confidence. Magic Johnson and the Lakers were still formidable, but Chicago was on a mission. The series unfolded as a showcase for Michael Jordan's greatness. In Game 1, Jordan delivered an electrifying performance that would set the tone for the series. He scored 36 points, leading the Bulls to a dominant 108-105 victory. But it was in Game 2, where Jordan truly announced his arrival as the NBA's most dominant player. He posted a 29-point, 13-assist performance, and the Bulls won 107-86. His leadership and ability to take over games were on full display. Jordan's ability to adjust to any situation was something that separated him from other players. When Magic Johnson and the Lakers tried to impose their fast-paced style, Jordan and the Bulls countered with their balanced attack, mixing precision offense with gritty defense. By Game 3, the Bulls had taken a commanding 2-0 lead in the series, and they were playing with a sense of purpose and intensity that the Lakers couldn't match. But even as Chicago seemed to be in control, the Lakers were not going to back down easily. Game 3 was crucial. The Lakers came out with all the desperation that a championship team would have. Magic Johnson led the charge, and despite a fierce performance from Jordan, the Lakers managed to stave off a sweep by winning Game 3. The final score was 104-96, and for a moment, the dream of a championship seemed distant. Yet, Jordan remained unfazed. His focus was unwavering. Game 4 was a pivotal moment not only for Jordan but for the Bulls as a whole. The pressure of finishing off a championship opponent was immense, but Jordan thrived under the spotlight. With his leadership and scoring ability, the Bulls clinched the NBA title with a 108-105 victory in Game 5. Jordan had finally achieved what had seemed almost impossible only a few years earlier. He was an NBA champion. In the aftermath of the finals, the accolades poured in. Jordan was named the Finals MVP after averaging 31.2 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 11.4 assists per game. He had carried the Bulls on his back, but what made this title even more significant was the way the team had come together. For the first time, Jordan wasn't just an individual star, he was the cornerstone of a championship team. But the true significance of the 1991 championship was more than just the validation of Jordan's greatness. It marked the beginning of the Chicago Bulls' dominance in the NBA, a dominance that would span much of the 1990s. The victory also solidified Jordan's place in history as a player who could lead a team to a title, not just dominate as an individual. It was the start of a legacy that would see the Bulls win 6 championships in 8 years, with Jordan as the central figure in each of those victories. Jordan's success in 1991 was a reflection of his growth as a player and leader. He had learned to trust his teammates, to work within a system, and to elevate his game in ways that went beyond scoring. The triangle offense, with its emphasis on spacing, ball movement, and unselfishness, was the perfect fit for Jordan's skill set. He no longer had to do everything himself. The trust he had in his teammates, particularly Pippen, allowed the Bulls to become a well-rounded team capable of achieving greatness. The 1991 championship also marked the end of an era for the NBA. The Los Angeles Lakers and Boston Celtics, who had dominated the league in the 1980s, were beginning to fade. The NBA was now in the hands of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. The league's future had shifted to Chicago, where a new dynasty was taking shape. And as the team celebrated their victory, Jordan's focus immediately turned to the next goal. He was hungry for more. The championship was his, but it wasn't enough. Jordan wasn't satisfied with one title. He wanted to prove that he and the Bulls could maintain their dominance over the long term. But in that moment, as the confetti fell and the Bulls celebrated their first ever championship, Michael Jordan had accomplished what he had set out to do. He had brought a championship to Chicago and confirmed his place as one of the greatest players in the history of the game. More importantly, he had shown the world that he was capable of leading a team to the highest level of success, and that the Chicago Bulls were a force to be reckoned with in the NBA for years to come. The breakthrough of 1991 was just the beginning. As Jordan held the Finals MVP trophy aloft, it was clear that his journey had only just begun. With a new level of confidence, the Chicago Bulls were poised to continue their reign as the dominant force in basketball, and Michael Jordan would be the one to lead them there, one title at a time. The summer of 1993 was one of the most turbulent and transformative periods in Michael Jordan's life. Having led the Chicago Bulls to 3 consecutive championships from 1991 to 1993, Jordan had reached the pinnacle of his career. He was not only the best basketball player in the world but also an international icon. His Air Jordan brand had become a cultural phenomenon, and his exploits on the court had cemented his status as the most dominant player in the NBA. Yet, despite all the success, Jordan's world was about to change in ways he couldn't have anticipated. At the height of his dominance, Jordan made the shocking decision to retire from basketball at the age of 30. The announcement sent shockwaves through the sports world. The timing seemed unusual. Jordan had just won 3 consecutive championships and had captured 3 straight Finals MVP awards. He was at the peak of his powers. But beneath the surface, Jordan was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. In July 1993, after the Bulls had won their 3rd consecutive title, Jordan made his decision. The catalyst for his retirement was not just the physical toll of a grueling NBA season, but the profound emotional pain he had endured over the past year. In July 1993, his father, James Jordan Sr., was tragically murdered during a robbery while driving through North Carolina. James Jordan had been one of the most influential figures in Michael's life. He was not just a father but also a mentor, a friend, and a constant presence throughout Michael's rise to greatness. The loss of his father was a devastating blow to Michael, one that affected him deeply. The emotional pain of losing James, combined with the relentless pressure of maintaining his place as the best player in the world, led to Jordan's decision to walk away from the game. He felt as though basketball, the one thing that had always given him solace, no longer held the same meaning. He needed to step away to cope with his grief and find a new sense of direction. But Michael Jordan's retirement wasn't just about grief. It was also about burnout. After years of playing at the highest level, winning titles, and being in the public eye, Jordan longed for a break. He had accomplished everything he set out to do in the NBA. Winning 3 championships in a row was an incredible feat, and Jordan felt he had proven himself as the greatest player to ever play the game. Yet, despite all the success, he felt emotionally drained. The intensity of the game, the weight of expectations, and the pressure to perform at an elite level every night had taken their toll. Jordan's decision to step away from basketball in the summer of 1993 was a surprising one, but it also marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. He turned to baseball, a sport his father had loved and one that Jordan had played briefly in high school. It was a chance to try something new, to escape the pressures of the NBA, and to honor the memory of his father. Jordan signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox and joined their Double-A affiliate, the Birmingham Barons, in Alabama. The transition to professional baseball was anything but easy. Jordan had not played baseball seriously since high school, and the level of competition in the minor leagues was far more advanced than he had anticipated. In his first season with the Barons, Jordan struggled mightily at the plate, hitting only .202 with 3 home runs and 51 RBIs. The challenges of adjusting to a new sport were daunting, and Jordan, used to dominating the basketball court, found himself humbled by the learning curve of baseball. His batting average was low, and he struggled to hit fastballs, let alone make consistent contact. Despite the challenges, Jordan was determined to prove that he could succeed in baseball. He was no stranger to hard work and relentless training, and he applied the same work ethic to baseball that had made him a basketball legend. His commitment to improving his game was evident, and although he was far from a star in the minor leagues, Jordan's presence with the Barons generated excitement. People came from all over to see the NBA legend play baseball, and while his numbers didn't reflect his fame, Jordan's influence on the team was undeniable. Jordan's time in baseball, though marked by struggles on the field, was a period of growth and reflection for him. Away from the basketball spotlight, he could recalibrate his life. Baseball allowed him to temporarily escape the weight of being Michael Jordan, the basketball icon. It gave him the space to grieve, to heal, and to work through the pain of losing his father. Though the experience in baseball was far from perfect, it provided Jordan with a sense of peace and a renewed sense of purpose. Meanwhile, the Chicago Bulls had to adjust to life without their star player. The team, which had won 3 consecutive championships, was left without its leader. Jordan's absence left a massive void. The Bulls were still a talented team, with players like Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and Tony Kukoc, but the chemistry and leadership that Jordan provided were impossible to replace. Without Jordan, the team's dynamics shifted. Pippen, in particular, had to step up and assume the leadership role, but no one could truly fill Jordan's shoes. The Bulls' performance in the 1993-94 season was a reflection of their struggle to adapt without him. They finished with a 55-27 record, still one of the best in the league, but it was clear that they were not the same team without their leader. The most significant impact of Jordan's absence was on the Bulls' playoff run. Despite the talent they had, the Bulls were eliminated in the Eastern Conference semifinals by the New York Knicks. It was a painful reminder that even the best teams could struggle without the right leadership. The loss further emphasized how irreplaceable Jordan was to the team's success. During his year away from the NBA, Jordan's legacy continued to grow. While he wasn't playing basketball, his name was still synonymous with greatness. His time in baseball might have been a detour, but the sports world continued to view him as the standard for excellence. And for Jordan, the time away from basketball gave him a new perspective on what truly mattered. By the time Jordan returned to the NBA in 1995, the world had changed. The landscape of the NBA was evolving. Other players like Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon, and David Robinson had emerged as stars in the league, and new challenges awaited the Bulls. Yet, Jordan's absence had made him hungrier than ever before. He was ready to reclaim his throne as the best player in the world. And when he made his dramatic return to the NBA, wearing number 45 instead of his familiar 23, the message was clear: Michael Jordan was back, and he was ready to remind everyone why he was the greatest. Jordan's time away from basketball allowed him to reset and recharge. It provided him with the space to grieve the loss of his father, but it also allowed him to step away from the intense pressures of being the world's greatest basketball player. But when he returned, he came back stronger than ever, with a renewed sense of focus and a desire to finish what he had started. The summer of change was just the beginning of an even more powerful chapter in Jordan's career, one that would solidify his legacy as a player who could overcome any obstacle, both on and off the court. Michael Jordan's retirement in 1993 was a shocking move that reverberated through the entire sports world. His departure from the Chicago Bulls, after leading them to 3 consecutive championships, left a significant void in the NBA. But just as quickly as he had disappeared, Jordan made an even more shocking announcement in March 1995. He was returning to the game. His return would not only reshape the landscape of the NBA but also reignite his drive to achieve even greater feats. The basketball world, and the Bulls, were about to see a side of Michael Jordan that no one could have anticipated, a side fueled by renewed purpose and the desire to prove that his legacy was far from finished. When Jordan announced his comeback, he did so with a simple, powerful statement: "I'm back." For Jordan, that was all that needed to be said. He had spent a year away from the game, and his time in baseball, though fulfilling in its own right, had never been his true passion. Basketball was in his blood, and after briefly stepping away to deal with personal grief and burnout, Jordan had decided he was ready to return to the NBA. The Bulls were in the midst of a successful season without him, still a dominant force in the league under the leadership of Scottie Pippen, but the team was incomplete without its leader. Jordan's return instantly shifted the balance of power in the league and was a clear signal to the rest of the NBA that the greatest player of all time was back and hungry for more championships. Jordan's first game back was a surreal moment for fans and players alike. It was March 19, 1995, when he took the floor at the United Center in Chicago, wearing the number 45 jersey. The atmosphere was electric as fans packed the arena to witness the return of the King. There was a sense of anticipation and curiosity. Could Jordan return to his former greatness after a year away from the game? Would he be able to pick up where he left off, or had the time off diminished his skills? Jordan's first game back was a mixed bag. Although he scored 19 points in his return against the Indiana Pacers, the Bulls fell short, losing 103-96. It was clear that Jordan was still finding his rhythm, and the team was adjusting to his return. But for the basketball world, the fact that Jordan was back on the court, contributing to the team, was enough to reignite excitement and hope for another championship run. In the weeks that followed, Jordan continued to get back into basketball shape, refining his game. While it was clear that his time away from basketball had not diminished his skill set, it also became apparent that he was not quite at the level he had been in 1993, at least not yet. There was a slight rustiness in his play, and his jump shot was off, a result of the year away from the intense, repetitive drills that had once made him a shooting machine. But the Jordan of old was gradually emerging. His athleticism, his court vision, and his competitive fire were unmistakable. It was clear that he was still the best player on the court. Jordan's return wasn't just about scoring points, it was about leadership. The Bulls, while successful without him, were still in need of the kind of presence and leadership that Jordan provided. Scottie Pippen had stepped up in Jordan's absence, but the team lacked the mental toughness and focus that Jordan brought. His ability to demand the best from his teammates was unmatched, and the return of that leadership was felt immediately. As the regular season wound down, the Bulls began to find their rhythm with Jordan back in the fold. The team started winning games again at a dominant pace, and Jordan's presence on the court transformed the team's overall play. He wasn't just playing at an elite level, he was elevating everyone around him. The addition of Jordan once again made the Bulls a legitimate championship contender. The NBA playoffs were an entirely different beast, however. The Chicago Bulls, now led by Jordan, would face intense competition from teams like the New York Knicks, the Orlando Magic, and the defending champion Houston Rockets. The pressure was mounting, not just on Jordan, but on the entire team. The championship was within reach, but the road to it would not be easy. In the first round of the 1995 playoffs, the Bulls squared off against the Charlotte Hornets. Jordan, now back in his familiar number 23 jersey, showed that he was returning to form. He was scoring at will, and his leadership on both ends of the floor was unmistakable. The Bulls dominated the Hornets, winning the series 3-0. Jordan was back, and the Bulls were clicking on all cylinders. In the Eastern Conference semifinals, however, the Bulls faced a much tougher challenge, the Orlando Magic. The Magic, led by the dynamic duo of Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway, had finished with the best record in the Eastern Conference that season. Orlando was a young, hungry team, and they were eager to prove that they were the new force in the East. The Magic also had the home court advantage, making them even more dangerous. The series between the Bulls and the Magic proved to be one of the most intriguing and challenging of Jordan's career. While Jordan was playing at a high level, it was evident that the Bulls were still finding their way after his return. Orlando's defense, combined with the offensive firepower of O'Neal and Hardaway, proved to be too much for Chicago. The Magic took a commanding 3-1 lead in the series, putting the Bulls on the brink of elimination. Despite Jordan's best efforts, the Bulls fell short in the 1995 Eastern Conference semifinals. The Magic won the series 4-2, and Chicago's dreams of returning to the NBA Finals were dashed. Jordan was visibly disappointed, but the loss served as a powerful reminder that the road to a championship was never easy. His time away from the game had taken a toll on the team's chemistry, and it was clear that they had more work to do. However, even in the loss, there were glimmers of hope. Jordan had proven that, despite his time away, he was still one of the most dangerous players in the league. His skill, his leadership, and his determination had not gone away. The loss to the Magic served as a valuable lesson for Jordan and the Bulls. They would need to work harder, grow stronger, and regain their championship-level form if they were to reclaim their spot at the top of the NBA. As the offseason began, Jordan reflected on the season. Despite the playoff exit, he knew that his return had been a success. He had rediscovered his love for the game, and more importantly, he had reminded the world that he was still Michael Jordan. His hunger to win was as strong as ever, and with a few adjustments, the Bulls would be ready to return to the finals. The defeat to the Magic wasn't the end of Jordan's journey, it was simply a stepping stone. Jordan's return to the NBA, after a brief but significant hiatus, would go down as one of the greatest comebacks in the history of sports. His determination to prove that he was still the best player in the world was unmatched, and his ability to elevate those around him remained one of his most remarkable traits. The 1995 season had its ups and downs, but for Michael Jordan, it was clear that he was just getting started. The fire had been rekindled, and his journey was far from over. The world would soon see what was to come, another three-peat that would solidify his legacy as the greatest basketball player of all time. The final chapter of Michael Jordan's career was one that solidified his place in history. It wasn't just about the championships, the records, or the accolades. It was about the mark he left on the game, on the world, and on those who watched him. Jordan's journey had been filled with triumphs, setbacks, comebacks, and personal growth. But as he walked away from the game for good in 1999, it was clear that his impact transcended the basketball court. This was the culmination of a career that had not only defined an era but had shaped the future of the sport itself. Jordan's second retirement in 1999 marked the end of an era. After returning from his first retirement in 1995, he had led the Chicago Bulls to 3 more NBA championships, completing another historic three-peat. The 1997 and 1998 seasons were proof that Jordan had fully reclaimed his throne as the greatest player in the game. Even in his mid-30s, Jordan remained the best player on the court, displaying the same ferocity and competitive spirit that had defined his career from the start. The Bulls' 1998 championship was the final chapter of their dynasty. It was also the perfect ending to Jordan's career with the team that had become synonymous with his greatness. The 1998 NBA Finals were a fitting conclusion to Jordan's time with the Bulls. After years of dominating the league, the Chicago Bulls were now facing the Utah Jazz for the second consecutive year. The series was tightly contested, with both teams battling for supremacy. The Jazz, led by the dynamic duo of Karl Malone and John Stockton, had been formidable throughout the season. But despite the strength of their opponents, it was clear that this was Jordan's time. Game 6 of the 1998 Finals is perhaps the most iconic moment in Jordan's career. With less than 30 seconds left on the clock and the Bulls trailing by 1 point, Jordan took control. He drove to the basket, pulled up, and hit a jump shot over the outstretched arm of Utah's Brian Russell. The shot, now known simply as the shot, gave the Bulls a 1-point lead. It was a perfect encapsulation of who Michael Jordan was, a player who thrived under pressure, who had the will to win, and who could execute in the most critical moments. The Bulls went on to win the game and the series, securing their 6th championship in 8 years. It was a fitting finale to a career that had already cemented Jordan's legacy as the greatest basketball player of all time. At 35 years old, Jordan had led the Bulls to yet another championship, leaving a lasting impression on the game and on the fans who had followed his journey from the beginning. The 1998 Finals were a statement. Jordan was not just the best player of his era, he was one of the best to ever play the game. After the championship, Jordan announced his retirement from basketball for the second time. This time, however, it seemed like the end. The world of basketball had seen Jordan's greatness, and there was a sense of closure. His farewell tour had come, and the NBA and its fans said goodbye to a legend. But even as Jordan left the court, his legacy continued to resonate. The game had changed because of him. The way players approached the sport, the expectations placed on them, and the global reach of the game, these were all elements that had been shaped by Michael Jordan. The impact of Jordan's career went beyond just the numbers. Of course, his 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and countless other accolades were a testament to his dominance. But his influence extended far beyond the basketball court. Jordan had become a global icon, a symbol of excellence, determination, and hard work. He was the player that everyone wanted to emulate. His Air Jordan brand had revolutionized the sneaker industry, making him a cultural force in ways that no athlete had ever been before. His impact on the sport was unmatched, but his influence on popular culture was equally profound. For the younger generation of basketball players, Jordan was more than just a role model, he was the standard by which they measured their own greatness. Players like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, who would later go on to dominate the NBA in their own right, have spoken openly about how Jordan inspired them to become better players. Bryant, in particular, modeled his game after Jordan's, studying his moves and adopting his mentality. LeBron James, too, has often cited Jordan as the player who shaped his understanding of the game and the way he approached competition. Michael Jordan had created a blueprint for success, and generations of players would follow it. Even as he retired, Jordan's impact on the game continued. His legacy was carried on by the players who had watched him play and learned from him. The NBA was in the process of evolving, with new stars emerging, but the standard for greatness had been set. Jordan had made basketball a global sport. His international appeal helped the NBA grow its reach across the world, bringing the game to new audiences and elevating the sport to new heights. After his second retirement, Jordan's connection to basketball did not end. In 2001, he made the surprising decision to return to the NBA once again, this time as a member of the Washington Wizards. Although he was no longer the player he once was, Jordan's presence in the league once again raised the profile of the sport. His return, even if it didn't result in another championship, showed that Jordan's love for the game was as strong as ever. He played 2 seasons with the Wizards, proving that his passion for basketball could never truly be extinguished. But even as a 40-year-old player, he was still Michael Jordan, still competitive, still hungry, and still one of the best players on the floor. Jordan's final departure from the NBA in 2003 marked the end of a historic career. By then, his legacy was cemented. He had changed the game in every way possible. He had inspired generations of players, transformed the global reach of basketball, and set a standard for excellence that would be nearly impossible to replicate. His impact on the NBA and the world of sports was immeasurable, and his legacy continues to live on. Even in retirement, Jordan remained involved in the game. In 2010, he became the majority owner of the Charlotte Hornets, a role that allowed him to continue shaping the future of the NBA, though now from the front office. As an owner, Jordan took on the challenge of building a winning franchise, bringing his leadership, competitiveness, and basketball knowledge to the business side of the sport. But it wasn't just about business for Michael Jordan. It was about passion. His career had been driven by a love for the game, a desire to be the best, and a relentless pursuit of greatness. Those qualities have carried him through every phase of his life. Today, Jordan's legacy endures, not just in the history books, but in the hearts and minds of every basketball player who dreams of greatness. Michael Jordan's story is more than just about basketball. It's about perseverance, about facing adversity, and about pushing yourself to achieve the impossible. It's a story about becoming the greatest, not through natural talent alone, but through hard work, dedication, and an unyielding belief in your ability to overcome any challenge. Michael Jordan is not just remembered for his accomplishments on the court, he's remembered for the way he changed the game forever. His legacy is one of ambition, greatness, and an unrelenting drive that inspired millions of people around the world to dream bigger, work harder, and never settle for less than their best.